Morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Delighted that you're here. So maybe, Colin, we can begin with you, and we'll come to Shanine's introduction in a little bit. And before we begin with the conversation, maybe you could just say a little bit about BT Business and your role at BT Business, and then we'll get into the conversation. Thank you.
Certainly, Annie. For those who don't know, BT Business is the customer-facing unit of BT that serves both the public sector and the private sector, small to medium business, and wholesale. So, in the public sector, you have things like uh, large government, defense, local government, health as well, and the nations. And I think small to medium business, it's probably self-evident of what it does. And then the private sector focuses on the large, complex champion businesses in the UK that require often complex solutions, solutions, security solutions, call center solutions, voice, a wide variety of communications and services, many of which are moving towards sovereign products and also AI-enabled products. My role as the CTO, I support the design of the products, the customer engagement, part of the solutioning and the technology strategy. I also support the international business as well. I'll hand over to my colleague.
Hang on, I'm going to come to Shanine's in a minute.
Sure.
But okay, so can we start talking about BT's approach to AI and how you look to span a BT business's approach to AI that spans efficiency and profitability?
Well, just from an approach perspective, obviously, first and foremost, what BT Business wants to be is relevant to our customers' changing needs. And obviously, we are, as part of BT, we provide the connectivity and the national critical infrastructure of many of the services that you think about it. Uh, you know, uh, Tens of ambulances, many health trusts, many police forces, the National Air Traffic Control, the 999 services, defense and protection of the nation. And obviously, as AI continues, there's a number of pillars that we want to do. One, first and foremost, is ensuring that our network and communication systems are ready and AI ready networks. And we are building a fabric in the UK at a layer two and layer three level that will be able to deal with the changing needs of the different traffic flow, which isn't necessarily additional volume, but a different fingerprint on the network. And that is very important. So making sure the infrastructure is ready, whether it be the changing of asymmetric flows on mobile systems for business users, where they're using smart glasses, and the flow of the data is actually upstream rather than the traditional flow of downstream, or whether or not it's agentic agents talking to each other in very high flows, non-stop with no breaks in the network, or post-training reasoning data flows where there are no breaks and what we call in the networking terms elephant flows, making sure that you have a network that has really great unit economics, but at the same time is programmable, API driven, intelligent, stateful, flexible, and engineered for these new traffic demands is key. On top of that is a set of differentiations on our products where we're adding value added services. So the products are smarter, more intuitive, easier to use, easier to buy, better serviced by AI, and our own people are more effective in how we do our work every day. And then there are also new opportunities where, as you probably imagine, telecommunication companies have a lot of power and they have a lot of space. and that's another interesting area as well. And many different telcos around the world are looking at what they do with those aspects as well. And I'll stop there, Annie.
So when we talk about unit economics and products, I think we're getting into Séanín territory there. So Séanín, maybe you can talk about your internal use cases, but perhaps just before you do, if you could say a few words about your role within BT and a little about BT, although I think probably most people have a good idea who BT is.
Here we are. Thank you. So I'm Séanín McCoy. I look after data and AI within networks. So we work into both the business customer facing unit, but also into our consumer facing units as well, and across all our brands. And for us, what we're really looking at from a networks context is how can we make our operations more efficient, and how can we have a really high performant and AI ready network as well. So some of the aspects that Colin touched on around being able to understand what the consumer demand is going to be, what the customer behavior will be, really shapes how we look at the future of the network as well. So what we have done internally and where we have looked is a unified strategy around how we approach network efficiency, but also being really deliberate about what we do and also what we don't do. So previously we would have looked at having lots of experimentation in the space, but actually that is subscale from a benefits perspective. And what we really need to do is coalesce around some bigger bets that allow us to have concentration of the talent that will work on those bigger bets, but also have the bigger outcome from a cost transformation perspective, but also then how that flows into better experience for our customers. And that's really been a big area of success for us, being really deliberate and really clear with our messaging internally, and also how that then flows through to our customers, and really keeping our customers at the front of our mind with that as well. We've done that in a number of different spaces. Some of it we're partnering with other organizations, and some of it is home built. And when we are looking at those areas that are home built, we are really looking at how can we tune those models to be really specific to the context of the domain of which we're operating within. So be that in the mobile domain, be that in traditional voice, or be that within broadband itself, and then an adjacency in TV. So being able to take that data, being able to have hold that information and have that wider context across all of our customer base is really how we help support the overall group ambitions from a networks perspective. That's been really impactful as well.
Okay, interesting, Séanín. So I've heard that from a couple of other large telcos, whereas some people's idea is to do a scattergun approach and deploy the newer kinds of AI everywhere. Quite a lot of the bigger ones seem to have taken an incredibly deliberate approach about prioritizing where they thought they'd get the biggest benefit and really focusing on scale, because scaling up is not an automatic or simple thing, I understand. Okay, so let's go back to Colin. Colin, I think our third strand of conversation was really at a crunch point, which is about monetization.
Yeah, and I think it's a really interesting pillar. I mean, we talked about the portfolio itself. Part of the monetization is to the extent that telcos can AI enable and create new features and possibilities that the existing products didn't, whether that be more sophisticated fraud detection, greater security, greater safety, greater resilience. That is one aspect of monetization on the existing core portfolio. Because remember, if you make 5% change on that, you get very high multiples very, very quickly. So moving the dial. So I believe that innovation isn't necessarily just a new widget, actually innovation in the core on what we perhaps traditionally thought were the core business that needs to continue to innovate as well. And we can't forget about that core. That being said, there is this third pillar of, so what about the new capabilities? Now, some telcos have stayed in the compute business. Some telcos have not focused in that area. I think putting aside each telco's strategy for a minute and just looking from a UK perspective, I think we are looking from a customer perspective. What am I hearing from customers around AI and the monetization side is we see a concern from our customers where you have a convergence of cybersecurity, resilience, and sovereignty all converging into sort of this sweet spot. Now, in the UK, we are relatively open market. We don't have many regulations around this, so it is more of a operational resilience. Do I have a single failure plane? Do I have all my eggs in one basket? And it doesn't take very long to look online to realize that actually the bulk of concern from our customers is that you're looking at like 80% of the AI chips are really bought by 6 or 7 companies, and that's a very high concentration of risk, both from the supply chain, where as one of those customers were to move from the supplier to a different chipset, that's a fairly big chunk, but also from the demand side in the UK. What that does is create a pull of value out to these platforms out of the UK. And what we want to make sure, and we're certainly keen to allow small businesses, startups, a secondary ecosystem ultimately to grow and flourish in the UK. And that will have benefits of additional taxation to the purse, additional benefits to the economy in the UK. It'll have additional growth of skill sets in the UK. I think there's space for both. And it's really about 80-20 rule, is that there still needs to be some homegrown British innovation and investments locally. And I think that's really one of the sweet spots of monetization, is how do we get the UK economy growing and investing in local innovation, where you have perhaps models trained in the UK, actual AI companies in the UK, where the value is coming back, and we're really developing these ecosystems. It won't just take just BT. It's actually, you need a whole ecosystem to get this up and going. And we're all in this together in the UK to actually help support sort of UK ethical sovereign AI startups and UK AI platforms, if nothing else. Putting aside geopolitics or anything else like that, just think about resilience. You don't necessarily, I think if you look back last year, my final point, if you look back at last year and you look at every month, there was very large outages, USD1, various cloud platforms, where you had this sort of ripple effect that you didn't realize that there was outages in the UK when actually these platforms were going down in the US or other parts of Europe. And I think there's a dawning realization for many of our customers where the concept of a single zone or a zonal resilience is not enough. And they actually need platform resilience that will require additional development, containerization, so it's portable, and actually run applications on multiple platforms. And therefore, having local platforms where there is no off switch outside of the UK. It's all contained. UK people running the platform, the compute is in the UK, the data is in the UK. We have absolute certainty that there is no external legal interference. That's a good option if you have, say, something that has really big scale and is a global platform, and then you have a local platform. Those could really be interesting monetization options if we can create those for the UK in the year ahead. It's a really exciting time.
So I'd like to ask Séanín, please, when you were speaking about your internal products and productization for both consumer and business in your case, and you build your own platforms as appropriate for differentiation and presumably to do with sovereignty as well. But you also work with hyperscalers, and that strikes me as potentially quite a tricky balance. And you also need to listen to what your customers want at the same time. So it's quite a lot going on there to take into consideration.
Yes, there's quite a lot from a hybrid architecture perspective. So we've set out some quite strong internal rules around where we work with the hyperscalers and what aspects of that demand is more suitable to be hosted within those environments versus what we build on-prem ourselves. And having explored both options, what we find from a sovereign perspective and what we do, which is more specific to the networks, we tend to do that on-prem, and we tend to look at particular partners where we can build out solutions that are that allow us to scale within our own infrastructure. So the aspects that Colin was talking about from a monetization perspective, we're actually experimenting with that internally ourselves. So we are building the platforms that we will also sell. So we understand the challenges that go alongside that, but we also understand the opportunity. And what we build for ourselves is also then monetizable beyond that. And some of the learnings that we have then from our AI operations, being able to get into much deeper RCA, we're able to pass that on as well and bring that expertise into other businesses as well. So that's really helpful having that together. The debate around sovereign data and where we host our data and what we will put into a hyperscaler, that really is use case dependent. And being able to fully understand what the customer demand is at the end of that use case really helps us drive where is the most appropriate place to host that data and to build out those solutions. But the hybrid architecture model is something that we expect to continue. And it's something that as a networks organization, we see good benefit in being able to have the best of both worlds.
Okay, thank you. And also I omitted to mention sooner, so sorry. If you take your mouse to the bottom of the Zoom screen, you will find in the toolbar a Q&A channel. So if anybody in the audience would like to ask Colin and Séanín any questions, if you type them in, please, we'll get through as many as we can. Thank you. Okay, so now my favorite question always, and especially in large scale, difficult endeavors. I'd like to ask you both what you'd have done differently at the start if you'd known then what you know now from your efforts in deploying and developing AI. I mean, for example, I'm wondering about whether you've had to revisit data management and models so that AI can be applied to it, because I guess when they were developed, although I realize it's an ongoing thing, maybe that's not what the thinking was, because ChatGPT only turned up in 2020, like 2022. So, okay, Séanín, maybe, I don't know, do you want to go with that? I don't know.
Yeah, so thinking about that question, I suppose I have two answers to that. One is a kind of people and culture answer, and the other is a technical view. So I suppose the big aspect for me was the journey that we have to bring colleagues along as part of it. It is such a huge transformation, both on the availability of knowledge and the ability to think about outcomes in a different way. So the path to solving a problem in some cases has fundamentally changed, and that's a really important change curve to bring teams on and to really understand how we can be more efficient and use these tools in a really quite transformative way. So if I were to go back to the start, I would put more emphasis on that early on and introduce the training and learning at the right stage. So it can almost be a disbenefit introducing training too early if we don't have the tool set ready to go for teams. And that's something that we learned from a technical perspective. What I would say is, I suppose there's quite a circular debate around, do you have to get your data in a much better state before you use AI? And what I would say to that is, we're never going to have perfect data within a telco. That's just not going to happen. And also, we are quite set in the data model structures that we have today and the data models that we have as an industry standard. They're also not going to shift at pace. So what we have to be able to do is augment our SMEs with the tooling that we have and be able to be really robust in what we put into our feedback mechanisms, into those deep RCA and machine learning processes that we build, and having that domain expertise sit right alongside your machine learning engineers for us has been a really big win. But it took us a little while to get there, to bring those two teams together. And as we go further down the road of where we will do much more of our RCA via machine learning, there will be demand that we will put back in root cause analysis.
Yes.
Yeah, so getting to the root of the problem as quickly as possible so that we can either preemptively fix it or proactively contact customers and get some engineers out to fix issues if that's what we need. That space and being able to from an AI perspective, being able to look at areas that we need to go into in much more depth to be able to get to those tricky issues quicker. That's stuff that we will have to feed back into industry as well around standardization, and I think that is a big area for us as we go forward.
Okay, what about you, Colin? What do you wish you'd known at the beginning that you've learned since?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of things that
I would
we could
think.
spend a lot of time around learnings. I'll pick one is probably something that we learned along the way is about culture. Seen in Séanín mentioned it a minute ago, and that what we've realized, well, certainly what I've realized, and I can only speak for myself on this, is what I've realized is that actually AI is not just for a core group of data scientists in BT. And then, we perhaps started with the training as sort of AI boot camps, like many folks, and it has some really brilliant training around data science and maths and statistics and creating and training the sort of core back-end models that power a lot of our platforms. And that was fine, but I realized that, as we went along, is that you have two groups where actually you have one group of people building the really hard science of AI, of training models, a couple of very important models that power many systems, and they have very strong guardrails, lots of ethics, how you treat data, and it takes a lot of hard science to do that part. But the second part is AI for everyone, which is AI exploitation of AI platforms that are pervasive in the tools that we use in our office productivity tools, where there are immediate improvements that you can start to leverage around building agents. So there's almost two tracks of training that we've got in BT now, where there's an AI for everyone, where they can actually exploit, accelerate, build new tools to actually help themselves, and also learn how to do the brilliant basics. And I saw a question from Ellie there.
I was just going to say, we've got a couple of questions here.
Yeah, I saw a question from, what are the homegrown products? I mean, I have one is an AI product manager. So, a typical product managers, they get thousands of questions from sales teams throughout the year, and they're building their products. And the question is, can you take that body of knowledge, because many of those questions are often the same questions.
Mm-hmm.
So like a super smart FAQ from that side. And we built one from that perspective. And it is really quite interesting and powerful. But what we learned along the way is that the curation of the data of those answers. So if you had multiple documents that were being ingested by that agent, and those documents were over a period of time, over say 6 months, and in those documents it had a different release date or a different product feature in a release, then you lead to confusion, or perhaps, and I'll probably misuse the word hallucination, on the agent where the feeding. So it goes back to the lesson learned, and we've built a lot of agents internally. One of the lessons learned is sort of that there's still a garbage in, garbage out aspect. Truism here is that when you're creating expert models with AI, certainly at the front of house, and I'll defer to Séanín, who will have clever models to deal with imprecise data models in the back end and can deal with that. But when you're dealing with just summarization, actually what we learned was you just don't give them the whole hard drive. You don't give them the whole file folder. You create that information, and then you get much better quality expert AI agents that come out of it, which is probably self-evident, but those are some of the things I've personally learned along the way.
Well, I don't know, because like the beginning, it was almost a magic button, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Just throw the lot at it and it'll figure it out. So actually, it turns out it doesn't quite work like that.
yeah.
Sinead, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think Colin's absolutely right. There is a huge amount of pre-work required to make your model architecture really effective. So you see that in the RAG architecture of where you are looking at what documents you want to be retrieved based on the type of question or the type of prompt that you're putting into your model. But really, that upfront work needs to be done to really curate the content that goes in, because as Colin says, document veracity across many years. There is drift within the corpus of information that we hold for ourselves. So being able to fact check and verify that, and having a human in the loop until you're confident that you can have a human out of the loop, is really important and really fundamental for success. And sizing that risk as well with the blast radius of the change or the blast radius of the information that you're going to be allowed to be returned as well is something that I think is really key to get that right.
Okay, and we have a question from Adora. I don't know if you can answer this or not, Colin, but she's asking, thanks for sharing BT's vision regarding AI monetization. What level of investment is BT? I need to stress here that Colin is BT business, but anyway, expecting to achieve this vision, and how quickly does BT expect to generate ROI on this investment? And she also says, how does BT plan to work with the hyperscalers? Although I think we've actually sort of touched on that to fulfill the hybrid AI strategy that you and Séanín shared during this session. So a lot there, Colin, and we've got 2 minutes.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a simple answer because I don't want to get ahead of our public announcements.
Well, that's what I think.
What I can say is watch this space. I can say there's some incredibly exciting things coming, and we're very proud to also still be working with the hyperscalers. They are brilliant partners, and I think there's a place for homegrown and hyperscaler out there. They're invaluable partners and have their own sovereign instances of compute in the UK as well for various services. So, and I was more talking from a UK economy perspective of generating that startup ecosystem as well. So we see continued, like any telco, a deep collaborative relationship with the hyperscalers. But at the same time, we will start to think about sovereign by design. We have the Telecom Security Act. We think about resilience. We think about it as around failure planes and blast radiuses and compartmentalization and diversity and resilience in terms like that from an engineering perspective, and how we treat data against local regulations or specific vertical industries have their regulations which flow down. Financial services have quite some extreme. And so you're blending a sort of a regulatory risk, availability, resilience all together. Hyperscalers definitely have a huge part to play in that. But at the same time, we're also thinking about this concept of sovereign by design and sovereign resilience and new features that we're thinking more about these days as you start to see. What we want to ensure is there's no single failure plane on these platforms as well. So back to the question for Adara, my apologies. Watch this space. I'd love to tell you about some of the things that we're cooking up. I just can't quite yet. Wait till the actual marketing and the press releases as we come. But it's some really exciting stuff coming down the pipe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Séanín. One last word. We're right on the our time, but is there anything you care to add?
So I think it's just be bold in the ambition around what you're looking at, and really focus on the culture piece as well. That's a really important part of the journey.
That's great advice. Colin and Séanín, thank you very much indeed. Really interesting. Thank you so much.